So over 60% of the infrastructure within Bakhmut region has been destroyed entirely. Now, this has been spoken about by the governor of Donetsk Oblast, and he's been speaking about just how severely this region is in Ukraine has been destroyed, okay, and rendered completely unusable. Russia has been shelling the hell out of this place for, many a week now. And it's thought that the enemy opposition is slowing down, but of yesterday, we've seen that the shelling continued, killing many civilians in certain regions of Ukraine, which is terrible, okay? It's Christmas time. I know war doesn't stop for Christmas, but it just goes to show how terrible this whole thing truly is, guys. But I just want to show you a little bit of the area, what we're actually going to be talking about, and then getting into some of the information that's coming out, guys. So this map is slightly different to the one we normally use. I like to use this because it gives us a more in-depth understanding of the infrastructure that's in place there, okay, whereas the other maps doesn't normally do that. So zoom out a little bit, you can see that they've been encroaching on Bakhmut, and they've been, shelling the area very, very heavily over the past few weeks and months. The fighting that's been taking place in and around this area, there's been some of the horriblest we've seen. You only have to go into a few Telegram channels to see just how horrific some of the fighting is on both sides. We put a video out today about a trench system that was overrun by Ukrainian troops, and it's quite nasty stuff, guys. In terms of the area itself, this is quite a, or was a populous city. Not really a settlement as such. It's a big old area, loads of buildings, schools, parks, industry, buildings, factories, you name it. It's all here, guys. There's people living in homes here, or were living in homes, residential streets. We've got shopping centres, we've got medical centres. This place was booming with life. It was a beautiful little society within Ukraine, as were a lot of these areas we're talking about, but it's been completely annihilated by Russian shelling. Obviously the pretense for them to be able to take over this city and control it and then advance further on into Ukraine itself. So it's terrible, really. And the route into this place, they've had to take over little settlements along the way. People living in these areas have all suffered, guys, okay? Only 12 hours ago, I believe, when was this? 12 hours ago, Bakhmut and Advika direction, Russian army shelled this area. This is not uncommon, guys. This has been happening quite a bit. So that's the area we're talking about, in particular troops. Now, the article that I wanted to highlight is this. Donetsk Oblast Governor Pavlo said today that over 60% of the infrastructure in the city of Bakhmut is destroyed. It's been destroyed due to intense fighting that has been taking place there. It's either been completely destroyed or it's been partially destroyed. Either way, guys, there's going to be a massive cleanup operation for anyone wanting to, reside back into this area once it's free. And I say once it's free because I'm hopeful that it will be in the coming months, guys, okay? And again, hopeful doesn't necessarily mean that will be the case. He says Russia is constantly shelling Bakhmut's infrastructure. The enemy is keeping on scorching earth tactics, he said. On the same day, Eastern Military Command spokesperson said that the Bakhmut and Advika areas in Donetsk Oblast remain the sites of the heaviest hostilities at the current stage of the war. And I agree. Again, some of the stuff that we've seen has been horrific, guys. He reported that there were 28 episodes of fighting and 225 shellings from Russian artillery and the tanks in the Bakhmut area on the December 26th alone. So it's just been battered by tanks and artillery troops. This is extremely hard to fight in, okay? Being in the military myself, I have a little bit of an understanding of what you can and can't do. Now, infanteers can be very, very good at combating certain scenarios where there's tanks, okay? It depends on your ability to maneuver and position yourself on the battle space according to data and information in to be able to counteract those tanks with an ambush, for instance, okay? Not always successful though, and the people that you're firing at is obviously got a big metal stick pointing at you, and it aims to kill you. So it's quite difficult. It's very, very dangerous dealing with tanks in anywhere, really, okay? But there is ways to mitigate that. Now, when you're dealing with heavy bombardment from the artillery, then yeah, there's ways to mitigate that as well. You've got things such as the HIMARS rocket system. You've got special forces, crack teams be able to get behind enemy lines and to dislodge these the heavy bombardments. Not always possible though, because a lot of these guys who are in this region are hunkered down defending these positions in the first place. It all comes down to numbers, and a lot of the specialized military groups are obviously deployed elsewhere in Ukraine, so they can't be everywhere all the time. That's the problem we've got here. And Bakhmut is quite a big region, troops, okay? This is not a small area. This is quite a big area to fight in, so it's going to be really tough. You can't predict too well where the artillery systems are going to be firing when all of them are pointing in this region, in this area, as well as tanks and other things. So it's a very, very hard place to defend. It's such a big place as well, troops, okay? Now, other news: on the 25th December, Christmas Day, the Institute of Study of War said that Russia's advances near Bakhmut have lightly slowed down in recent days, although it is too early to tell if Russia's efforts to take the city are reaching their end. I don't think their efforts to retake the city are ending anytime soon. I think these efforts will continue into the new year. There's talks of Vladimir Putin wanting to increase their arms production over the next few months into the new year to be able to carry on this war. In contradicting articles from the same source, I'm not going to mention who, there's also talks that Putin is ready for peace talks. So you don't know what to believe with media at this moment in time. The same companies are banging out these articles with the clickbait titles to be able to get you to read into them and then literally fire out another article that completely contradicts what they've just said. So for me, as someone who likes to look into this, it's been very, very hard to piece the puzzle together, because at the end of the day, all I'm doing is regurgitating information that's already out there. That's all anyone is doing on YouTube with regards to Ukraine, unless you have people on the front lines telling you specifically what's going on. But even then, that's regurgitated from someone else's mouth. So it is really, really tough thing to do, and it's getting worse, guys. I don't know if you've had the same problem or not. Now, Zelensky said on December 20th that Bakhmut in Donetsk Oblast remains the hottest point in Ukraine out of the entire 1,300-kilometer front line. So let's look at that front line a little bit in depth now. So the front line, what he's talking about, troops, is this one specifically. Okay, I'll just annotate it with this red pen. It's this area here, okay? Massive front line, okay? And you've got to understand the significance of this. This front line to some people might be, it's a bit of a stalemate, there's not much happening, X, Y, and Z. Well, I agree in many cases, but if they do take a city such as Bakhmut, it enables their forces to, and I'll do this on a magnified scale, it allows them to push further inland, okay? And if they get a little bit of traction on this huge front line, it's only a matter of time if they do before they can start pushing in, taking over these little settlements, okay? And you don't want that to happen, because that's another large chunk of land for Russia. Okay, just like in the original counteroffensive just north of that position, large chunks of land can be overtaken very, very quickly in a moment's notice without you even realizing it. So don't think for 1 second that Russia couldn't do that if Ukraine doesn't utilize its strategical planning to the best of its ability with its correct soldiers and manpower and everything else, because it can. Things can change pretty quick. I hope it doesn't, but I just want to let you guys know that's how things like this happen in war. Bakhmut, a city with a pre-war population of around 70,000 people, is one of Russia's main targets. As seizing it could allow Russian forces to launch attacks on urban areas such as the other areas in Slovansk and Donetsk Oblast, as we've just mentioned, guys, okay? It's a bit of a strategical hub in that way. You might think it's a bit of a meat grinder at this moment in time, which it has been, but they've thought this through, and it is a bit of a strategical point for them to be able to take. They can take other areas from this, so you don't want to lose Bakhmut. It's going to be tough, guys. It is going to be a tough few months for Ukraine. Now, the Wagner Group, let's talk about the Wagner Group, which has been conducting a large portion of Russia's operations in Bakhmut, uses many poorly trained convicts it recruited to fight against Ukraine in an attempt to take the city. The UK Ministry of Defence previously reported on that. Now, so the troops in which they are utilising to take Bakhmut, if we take away the artillery and the shelling from the tanks, what we've got here is a situation where you've got heavily fortified defendable positions for Ukraine. And those positions are being threatened by effectively criminals who now have weapon systems. some people might be scared of that proposition, think, oh, criminals, evil, weapons, they're going to do damage. Not necessarily. If they haven't been trained correctly, it doesn't matter what crimes they're in jail for. It's not going to make them a good soldier necessarily, okay? Although their emotions behind the crimes in which they'll commit will be held to a different regard for themselves, okay? But one thing's for sure. This whole reason is going to make Bakhmut quite a difficult area to take unless Russia puts more sophisticated troops on the ground there to be able to get the job done, which in the grand scheme of things, I don't think they've got that many of these decent soldiers left. Many men have been wiped out in the original part of the invasion and throughout up until now. They're losing men every single day. Both sides are, but, Ukraine has a contingency in terms of being able to get decent men trained by decent NATO countries and put decent men in the places where they're needed. So the fighting's very different for both sides, troops. That's one thing I will say. But, there's a lot happening. I'm going to keep you guys updated the best I can. If you want to support me, because these videos on Ukraine don't actually make anything in the way that, due to the nature of the videos, then you can support me via the Patreon. Link will be in the description, troops. But thank you for being here. Short one, but hopefully important for you guys to get this information. So thank you for being here, troops. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy now.